Yeah, well, here we go, vlog, expedition paddling. If you knew the amount of faff and about that I'd done to get to this point, to press record on that little camera, you'd think I was a right goose, but yeah, here we are now. I'm going to chat a little bit, I suppose, about some of the trips I've done and some of the maybe tips and tricks I've learned, some of the stories. Do you need a bio on me? Possibly. I paddle long distances. I have a project at the moment, 7 rivers, 7 continents, and that's to paddle source to sea, the longest river on each continent, obviously. I've knocked off 3. Some years ago, 2007, I managed with two teammates, source to sea of the Amazon River. It was 153 days, a bit over 4,000 miles. That was 2007. 2010, I travelled to Iran and I walked for around 60 days, 63 days, about 1,100, 1,200 miles across Iran from the Caspian Sea to the Persian Gulf. Not too much paddling there, just walking. And then in 2012, I headed to the US and made source to sea descent of the Missouri-Mississippi River system. 3,800 miles, 3,780 miles in 117 days. And then in 2014 I headed to Russia and made descent of the Volga River there. So that's about 2,300 miles and that took 71 days. Really fun trip that. So yeah, that's what I do. I paddle. Spend a lot of time in tents and on rivers and beside rivers. And then when I'm not paddling, I've got 4 kids under 6 years old. So don't be surprised if one of them busts in that door behind me and stuffs this up. So vlog, like I said, my God, I've got some ideas that I'd like to have for this vlog. You know, I'm not going to sit here for 20 minutes, 30 minutes and bore you. I'd like to keep it under 10 minutes and just see what I can come up with. You know, I've got a few ideas for things like, you know, some of the things I've learned while paddling. You know, after spending, I guess, roughly 400 days and 12,000 miles on these big rivers, then you tend to pick up a few ideas of what you're doing. Otherwise, you know, I thought we could look at some photos from these trips and have a little story behind that as well. There's been some really good books written, you know, from you know, some old books, some new books about expedition paddling, and I'll, you know, might, you know, refer to them a couple of times. There's some good little stories behind those. And as well as that, you know, I've kept journals on all these trips, and it's funny to look back at them and read through them, and you know what you're thinking at the time. You know, you're not sort of acting in the same way that you would when you're not on river. So it's pretty funny to look at those. So yeah, so I'm just going to keep things pretty easy and pretty basic to begin with, and then see how it goes from there. And you know, feedback would be greatly appreciated. You know what I've got wrong, and if it was just boring, or if it just wasn't good, or if it was good, then that's cool as well. So today I'm just going to keep it pretty short, and I thought what we might do is just get a bit of a story about one of my favourite photos from the Amazon, from when we did the Amazon in 2007, and at the time it wasn't real fun, but to look back on, it's really cool. So hopefully in the next few seconds that picture will pop up on the screen if my editing skills are any good, and that picture is what we're going to chat about. I've got it in front of me on the computer here, and basically it's a picture of me and Nath Welsh, who was on the descent, and basically thought up the whole idea. And Nath's up to his neck in white water, and I'm holding on to him via his PFD with a strap or a loop, and he's trying to secure some rope to our raft, which 24 hours previously had wrapped on a huge boulder. But basically we were on the upper Amazon on the upper Emac, and we'd been on river probably for only about a week, maybe a week and a half, and we knew we were coming to an area called the Black Canyon, and it was going to close in a fair bit. The white water that we'd been through already, it wasn't too bad, you know. It was hard enough, and you know, a bit scary going around, you know, corners that you couldn't scout or didn't know if you could portage. And it was late in the afternoon, if I recall, I think about 4 o'clock. And you know, it was time to start looking for a camp. We tried to look for a camp at around 4:30 each day, and we knew this canyon, the Black Canyon, was coming up, so we didn't really want to enter it and find ourselves with not too many options. So, but we pushed on and started looking for a camp, and there were some small drops and some sort of tight areas, but I remember, you know, super clear that when we approached a particular rapid, it just went wrong really quickly. Within a second, we'd wrapped the boat, and yeah, there wasn't much we could do about it. We tried the high side and, you know, and stop the force of the water pushing it down under, but it was to no avail. And then that's when the sort of the trials and tribulations really started. We managed to all crawl up onto the boulder that it had wrapped upon, and yeah, and then had to assess our options from there. And looking at this picture now, it really brings it back. And it wasn't just one boulder. Actually, it was one car-sized boulder sort of pushed up against a truck-sized boulder in the middle of the river. But in between those two was a siphon. So after the boat wrapped, you know, for the time period after that, the nose of the boat was slowly getting sucked into this siphon, which was pretty nuts, you know. So we were fast losing light, and you know, we tried as hard as we could to free this boat, but it was going nowhere. You know, it was slowly getting sort of pulled under the water. So we had to make the call to what we were going to do. So what we did was set up a pulley system to the side, and we pulleyed, slung all the gear off the boat to a little sort of gravel beach area, and we worked into the night. We worked with headlamps, and you know, we're sitting there in this, I guess, grade 4 sort of rapid or section of water, you know, which working on white water in the middle of the night with headlamps is not the best idea. But you know, we wanted to get this boat off. We knew it was getting damaged, so we were getting pretty desperate. But you know, once it gets pitch black down there in the bottom of one of those canyons, it's a bit silly. It reaches a point where it's dumb to keep working on there. So we left it for the night. When the boat wrapped, unfortunately what had happened was 2 dry bags got ripped off. One got ripped open. Inside one of them was a solar panel. It was like worth about $1,500 US, which was our power for the trip. And then much worse than that, certainly not financially, but much worse was our kitchen, our cooking gear. That night, I've got some pictures of that as well, of you know, we cooked with a wood fire, which is fine, but no containers, anything like that. So, but we did have a food bag, and so we had tins of peaches and things like that, which became our bowls and our cooking pots. So yeah, that was pretty interesting, and we were just also so knackered, so tired that night that we just all crashed. But you know, we knew the next morning that we'd have to have another go. So up the next morning, gear on, and we were at it again. By this time, the boat had probably been pulled halfway down into that siphon. You know, it hadn't burst, it didn't have a hole yet, but the force of that water just pulling it down into that siphon was just mad, you know, just unbelievable. So yeah, we tried all different things, you know, different systems, pulley systems to try and pull it off, you know, and it wasn't budging. In that picture, which by the way I'll also link to, so you can have it up there as well. So Nate's, you know, he's in a really tough spot there. You know, he's about 1/2 meter from where that siphon is. and he slipped quite a lot, and he's trying to reach down under the water to secure a rope through one of the boat's D-rings, and I'm holding on to him there for dear life, and as it turned out, no matter what we did, it wasn't going to free it. And not long after that, and that was all day, we were there all day again, so it was that's probably 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, we were still working on that boat, sort of facing the prospect that we've lost our boat within the first week and a half of doing this whitewater, which would have been a huge bummer. It would have been a bit embarrassing, to say the least, but also our trip would have been over before we'd even begun. So that really sucked, I do recall. So not long after that, I got off the boulders and I was back on the side, and we were all trying to pull on these systems that we'd set up, and Nath had a really good idea, which sounds like a really bad idea on the surface of things, and that was to grab his the knife on his PFD and stab the boat intentionally, and which sounds like a really silly thing to do to an inflatable whitewater raft, but the hope was that would change the way that the water was acting on the boat. And so I remember Nath stabbed one section of the boat. It immediately deflated, of course. Nothing happened, and that was a downer, because we thought, well, now we just have to patch that up if we ever do get it off, and it didn't help at all. So I think he stabbed it once, nothing happened, and then he had another stab, and can you believe it, immediately after that second hole was put in, we pulled on the rope system, it floated off as if it was nothing. So yeah, that was a tough sort of, I guess, 25, 26 hours, to go from sort of, utter defeat to being so stoked to have this boat off this wrap was just unbelievable. And I'll also link to a whole series of photos taken during that time, and you'll see the state of the boat afterwards, and she wasn't looking pretty, but after a couple of patches it came up really well. But that was the first, I guess, big test on that whitewater. We knew after that things were pretty serious, and funnily enough we ran into worse difficulties than that further down on the Aparimac. But yeah, that's the story of that photo. So I think I might end it there. That was the little vlog one, I suppose, and maybe next time I can chat a little bit about some stuff in my journals from the Amazon, from the Volga, some other photos, and like I said, some other books, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. There'll be links underneath to the photos, to any other pertinent information, and feedback would be brilliant. I'm no pro at this, but you can only get better, I figure. So yeah, cheers, thanks.